So I was going to do the whole thing that I had talked about in the last video of these, where I was like, yeah, I'm going to do all these in different locations and all that good stuff. I had it all set up to do it in Boston, and then the whole best popular film thing happened, and I had to make an emergency video. So we're back in the regular set. Side note, I am working on a new set for Oscar videos, and this will be for something a little different. I'll get into that at a future date. Anyway, until that point, welcome back to award season coverage. This is what a lot of you are here for. It's what I love doing. We're sort of getting into the mix of things. I've always labeled the season itself as September is where the movies that want to be nominated but won't be will be coming out, and then October through December are where the bulk of the Oscar films come out, which, as I've said throughout this entire season, this seems to be one of the broadest years in Oscar history. There is an innumerable amount of films coming out that I personally cannot wait to see. I think it's going to be a very tough year to judge for the Oscars, because I think you're going to see a lot of movies squawk out and miss just like that because there are so many, and I think so many of them are going to be high quality. You get January, which gives you like the last minute releases, you know, the movies that release on Christmas in LA and New York, and then, you know, states everywhere else get them for the first couple of weeks, and then you get nominations and you get all the other award shows, and then you get February, the actual Academy Awards. So we're getting pretty close. We're nearing the end of August, which is when a lot of these September wannabe films are going to come out. So I think it's still a plausible time to be talking about contenders before we really start talking about predictions and getting into the muck of things and starting to see these films as they release through film festivals. I think that's very important when you're looking at that, and I did analysis videos on the film festivals and the reception that these films got last year, and I plan on doing the same thing this year because I think that those are pivotal in creating Oscar nominations. So today I have 4 more films for you that I've yet to discuss in these videos that I want to talk about. Lots that have been recommended in the comments section, lots that I feel as though have good chances that I haven't talked about yet, and these 4 in particular I've seen a lot about in the live streams that I do and in the comments section, so I want to talk about all of them and go as in-depth as possible as I can. So the first one I want to talk about is Beautiful Boy. Now this is the film coming out about the father and the son, played by Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet, about the son going through addiction, and Steve Carell is going to cry, and Timothée Chalamet is going to cry, and the Academy is going to cry, and everyone that sees this movie is going to cry, and we're all going to do this, and then the movie's going to get like a nomination in every category. I think this movie is probably one of the surest bets, not necessarily in winning, but in at least getting nominations. What I've noticed in terms of a pattern with the Academy Awards is that they love to nominate, but not necessarily award Best Picture to movies about 2 centric characters and their dynamic / relationship, right? You look at a lot of Best Picture nominees. You look at Call Me By Your Name, you look at La La Land, you look at Manchester by the Sea, you look at Whiplash, and a lot of these movies are driven primarily by the relationship between 2 main or lead and supporting characters, whether it be an actor or an actress, a lead actor, lead actress, a lead actor, supporting actress, whatever it may be, whatever the toss-up may be. That seems to be a big turn-on for the Academy when they're watching these movies and they see these movies. And this movie looks to be tailoring to that very strongly, especially when you have Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet, who have sort of become big Oscar favorites recently. Now, maybe not Steve Carell. I would say if you're putting your money down for one of these guys to be nominated and to possibly win, I would lean towards Timothée Chalamet. People got very angry at me last year for saying that I thought Gary Oldman had it locked, which he always did. I said from July. I have a video in July. You can go back and watch it where I say Gary Oldman was going to win no matter what, and he did. Timothée Chalamet never had a chance. But if he has a chance, it is absolutely this year. I think the supporting actor category is a little wider. It's a little, there's nothing like a Gary Oldman that's just right from the beginning of the season that's just a sure lock. And Timothée Chalamet obviously has a lot of regard with the Oscars as of late, and a lot of notice from them and a lot of notoriety coming with his name. He's been in everything and its mother in the last year. Every movie I see seems to have him in it somehow, some way. Even rewatching Interstellar, I was like, motherfucker, there he is again. Steve Carell, I think this is his best shot at getting a nomination in a while. I think after Foxcatcher, he was like, whoa, I can actually act. And so he said, I really like how Oscar nominations feel. And so he started doing all these movies that he thought would warrant him an Oscar nomination, like The Big Short and Battle of the Sexes, but he was wrong. But this movie most definitely looks like it's a sure bet. I mean, just you look at the premise of the film and you watch the trailer for the film, and it seems to be very Academy. It's what they like to award, like I was talking about, that character relationship, because that's a big thing when you're looking at the overall spectrum of how a film is made, right? It takes a lot of talent when it comes to screenwriting to portray a believable, well fleshed out and developed character relationship that you feel alter and change throughout the entire story while also having understanding this foundation that's set up. That's why you see a lot of these movies in the screenplay categories. Sometimes even, and mostly I think they win the screenplay categories. I mean, like movies I talked about earlier. Manchester by the Sea, right? That took your Best Screenplay Oscar. Call Me By Your Name, that took a Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar. So I think that that's a big thing when you have a film like this. The performances are obviously quite usually strong when it comes to these movies. Now, it is interesting because sometimes they'll only nominate one of the two. In my personal opinion, I think this is a situation in which you'll be seeing both of the actors nominated. I think this is just a movie that has a very wide range. I think you will be looking at it in a lot of different categories. I don't know if the campaigning for Best Director will be hard enough. And Best Director, I definitely think is going to be the tightest category this year because, like I said, there are so many films coming in, and performances I think are a little easier to select out of certain films that are like the standouts. But you know, you've got Steve McQueen, you got Damien Chazelle, you got Barry Jenkins, you got Spike Lee, you've got all these different directors that are coming in with a bunch of different films. You know, you could argue Bradley Cooper, things like that. So I don't know if I would put it in Best Director, but I'd put it in Lead Actor, Supporting Actor, and I'd put it in Screenplay. So I think this is definitely a movie to check out, and it'll be... there's a great Letterboxd list with just this and Boy Erased, and it's like one of Lady Bird's girlfriends or boyfriends plays someone struggling with something and the word boy is in the title, and it's like, yeah, you're probably going to see both of those at the Oscars. The second movie I want to talk about is A Star Is Born. This is by far the most recommended film, or most asked film people have been urging me to talk about and give my thoughts on. I see this movie's name pop up all the time, everywhere. So what do you think about A Star Is Born? What do you think about A Star Is Born? This, I believe, is the fourth or fifth incarnation of this story. I know it's been done many times over many decades, and I have seen none of them. But what makes this movie interesting to me when it comes to predicting what is going to happen is that I honestly do not believe I can make any kind of prediction until I see the movie, or until some kind of discussion as to reviews or what people think of this movie comes out, because right now there's no way of really knowing whether, like a lot of these movies you can kind of imply will be good, right? They have a really good director, they have really good cast members, they have really good writers. With this movie, you have a directorial debut from an actor who has not done anything major live action in at least a couple of years, who people have sort of forgot about and has gone off the map unless you know that Bradley Cooper voices Rocket Raccoon. And then you've got a lead actress who people are very weighed differently on in terms of an actress and a singer. I've never seen American Horror Story, but she is a Golden Globe winner, so I guess I'm not one to judge. I know that's like kind of her only acting thing, big acting thing thus far, and I think that's what a lot of people are judging it on, but I think it's damn near impossible to judge whether this film has any kind of chances, because you can't be like, oh, it's got a great director. We don't know if Bradley Cooper is capable of directing a coherent film. I'd like to think he is, considering how many talented directors he's worked with over the years, like David O. Russell and Clint Eastwood and so many other countless names that he's continued to work with, but there's just no way of knowing. It could be a complete flop. We have no idea. The fact that it's a fourth incarnation of this, I mean, the Oscars might want to say, okay, we've seen A Star Is Born 3 different times, and we've nominated it 3 different times. Maybe it's time to give it a fucking rest. There's no way to know. Now, if you want my overall, right now, without knowing whether the film is good, or whether people like it or not, or whether there's any kind of positive or negative reception, I think that Lady Gaga over anyone else has a pretty damn good shot. You'll also probably see it in Best Original Song. But the Oscars really like to give the trophy to musicians who put on a really good performance that just no one would expect, right? Look at Jared Leto with Dallas Buyers Club. Look at Cher in that one movie she was in with Nicolas Cage. Jennifer Hudson for Dreamgirls. Like, they really like doing that. And I think it's because there's a certain kind of Oscar that they like to give out that I don't even think people think about. You look at certain years in Oscar history with performances, right? And I've noticed that oftentimes they will give the Oscar to maybe not the best performance in the category. The example I like to give with this is when it was Matthew McConaughey for Dallas Buyers Club versus Leonardo DiCaprio for The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, you can bitch and fight about who should have won and why they should have won and whatever. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, Matthew McConaughey won. But what I think happened was you had Matthew McConaughey, who in 2014 was known as the star of Ghost of Girlfriend's Past. This was the first time, or 2013, this was the first time that people really started to see him as being a real actor. Sure, Mud had come out before that, and The Lincoln Lawyer had come out before that, but Dallas Buyers Club was really what garnered the attention for Matthew McConaughey, because he started getting Oscar nominations for it, right? And the Academy went, that's Matthew McConaughey, that's a guy you'd never expect a good performance from. We're going to vote for him because this is just crazy and he gives such a great performance. It draws more attention to the performance when you do not expect a good performance out of that actor. Now then you look at Leonardo DiCaprio for The Wolf of Wall Street and the Academy's going, well, it's just Leonardo DiCaprio giving another great performance. You know, it's just him doing what Leonardo DiCaprio does. That's why so many of these great performers still don't have Oscars. That's why Amy Adams still doesn't have one. That's why Glenn Close still doesn't have one. You know, so I think that's ultimately what happened that year, and I think that could be something you see this year, where Lady Gaga could put on a really good performance, and the Academy's like, who the hell would have saw that coming? And then they keep thinking about it, and they're like, man, she was really, really good. She was really, really good. And then circle that name. So I think that if you want to bet on anything for this, you would probably want to bet on her. But at that same time, the Academy has shown their love for Bradley Cooper. There was a time where he was nominated 3 years in a row, and the poor bastard just kept getting beat by someone who had the category won for, like, the entire year. I know Daniel Day-Lewis beat him for Lincoln. I know Jared Leto beat him for Dallas Buyers Club, and I think Eddie Redmayne beat him for Theory of Everything. But honestly, with this one, I just don't know. And I just want to see it before I make any kind of real predictions. But I would say Lady Gaga is a pretty damn good bet for the reason that I gave. That's my thought process on it. I forgot what the third movie was that I was going to talk about. God damn it. I have the fourth one. I don't know what the third one is. I might have to go look. What in the fuck was it? Got it! The Favorite. I figured it out. Alright. So, The Favorite is Yorgos Lanthimos' newest film. He has proven to be an interesting name when it comes to the Oscars. I had made sort of a prediction last year that I thought The Killing of a Sacred Deer might have a shot, and then I saw it, and I was like, there is not one chance in hell that the Oscars are going to touch this with a 10-foot pole. But they did give The Lobster Best Original Screenplay, or a nomination for that is, which I still think was a very interesting choice from them, not something I would have expected from them. However, with this movie, he's tackling the Oscars' favorite genre, which is a period piece. I talked briefly about Mary Queen of Scots before. I think maybe the first or second video. Well, that would make sense. Probably the second video. And then everyone saw the trailer and everyone was like, it just looks basic. Because we've seen so many of these period piece movies that just do the same shit over and over and over again. It seems to be Oscar bait. And one thing I'll give the Academy credit for in recent history is they're getting better at noticing that, at noticing the Oscar bait, and saying, if you're not special, if you're not good, if you don't do anything unique, then we're not necessarily going to award you just because you're this type of movie. We're still primarily going to award this type of movie, but just because you're that type of movie doesn't necessarily mean you've got an easy pass in. Now that being said, with something like The Favorite that does take place in this kind of era, if you have seen the trailer, this movie does look very, very different than everything else that I've seen like it. Yorgos is very, very talented in terms of being a unique stylistic director. You watch his 2 recent films, and nobody else could have fucking came up with that. I've no mind could withdraw what he did other than his own. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see that same mind take on a movie like this, especially with someone like Emma Stone, who I still think the Academy is looking to hand out. I think she could be the new, like, kind of Jennifer Lawrence type deal. You've got Rachel Weisz, who is also an Oscar winner, Olivia Colman, who I think will absolutely be nominated. I just think that the Oscars, like I said, have gotten so much better at giving awards and accolades to movies that are unique and that are trying something new and are not just doing the same old nonsense. And I think this is the exact kind of movie that they're looking for. A movie that takes what they love, set where it's exactly what they want, with performances, all 3 leading women, by the way, which is very important. And taking a unique and different route in terms of delivering it. I think it's going to be a breath of fresh air for them. I think it's going to draw that much more attention to it, and I think it's going to be an even bigger player than people are thinking about right now. I think people are underestimating it in a sense. I look forward to seeing this movie like crazy. I think it almost reminds me a little bit of Shakespeare in Love in terms of how Shakespeare in Love took kind of that period piece type thing, but tried to do it in a little bit of a different way. You can argue whether it was done correctly. I'll fucking talk about how I don't think it was until the end of time. But this movie has a brilliant mind in the director's chair, and I think he knows what he's doing. He's got a great release date for it. It's in the heart of November, and I think this is absolutely one to look out for. Not just for Oscars, but I think it's going to be a great movie, and it's going to be a really great experience to see kind of a tired genre be taken in a little bit of a different direction by a talented, unique director. The 4th and final film I want to talk about this time around is Roma, which is Alfonso Cuarón's newest movie. People have been constantly telling me to check this movie out and watch the trailers for it and all this shit, and I finally did, and I think it looks good despite the fact that I have absolutely no idea what it's about from the teaser. It's all black and white, and I have 2 main points when it comes to this movie. I haven't looked too far into it, but one is that the Academy does love Alfonso Cuarón. If anything shows that, it's fucking Gravity, which I hate. I absolutely despise that movie. It deserved all those goddamn technical awards, but God, does that movie suck. That script is abysmal. I thought he did a very good job directing it, but I thought he was handed a piece of garbage script, which is just, should be retitled, Sandra Bullock talks to herself for 90 minutes while Alfonso Cuarón tries to do some interesting visual things with it. Like, that's what it is. You know, it's a bad... whatever, I don't care. Point is, over the years, the movies he's made, they've received pretty solid acclaim when it comes to the Oscars. They nominate his movies a lot. They don't always give them wins, but sometimes it's performances. Sometimes when you look at Gravity, it's all across the board. It can be whatever. A lot of foreign film nominations I think he has. But the movie's biggest anchor, what will prove to slow this movie down, is Netflix. If history of the last 2 to 3 years shows anything, the Academy is not ready to award Netflix films in a major way yet. Beasts of No Nation cost Idris Elba a nomination because that movie was Netflix and that whole original movie thing was just getting started, and then everyone was like, okay, Mudbound is going to change that, and it sort of did. It picked up more nominations, I think, than any Netflix movie thus far. But that being said, it was not in any of the major 6. It was not in Best Picture. It was not in Director. It was not in any of the leading performances. It was not in Writing. So, you know, you still have to ask yourself, is the Academy ready to award Netflix films? These movies that just come out on the internet and maybe will come out in a few theaters nationwide. Are we ready to award films that don't get a wide release? I think Amazon Studios is doing it perfectly. They put their shit on Amazon Prime, and everyone who has Prime can watch them for probably a cheaper price, but they also put their damn movies in theaters, and you look at their record in the last couple of years, and it's working pretty goddamn well for them. I think Amazon is doing great when it comes to accolades, but I think that Netflix and their resistance to release in theaters is hurting them, because ultimately, yes, a lot of audience members watch movies at home now. They wait for DVD, they wait for Blu-ray, they wait for streaming, they wait for fucking whatever. But the Academy, in a sense, is still old-fashioned. They are still all about how films used to be made, which is why fucking La La Land was so successful. It's all about old Hollywood, and Moonlight, even though it did beat it, feels like kind of an old-fashioned type of movie in the way that it's compiled, right? So, I think that Netflix still acts as an anchor now. If anyone can turn that around, it is Alfonso Cuarón, and it is the kind of movie that this looks like. But I personally am not terribly confident in it because of the Netflix concept. I think that that still works as an anchor towards a movie's success at the Oscars, and I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. Maybe The Irishman would do it. I mean, I think if anything's going to do it, it's going to be The Irishman, but there's still no fucking release date for that. What the hell are you doing? Martin, like, figure that out. Let's get that movie. Let's see it. Come on. Release that boy. Anyway, that is it for this round of Oscar Contenders. This will probably be the last video of this that I do before I start talking about, like, you know, when Venice Film Festival ends, I'll talk about that. When TIFF ends, I'll talk about that. When all these different film festivals end, I will analyze those. I'll analyze the reviews that come out for these movies and talk about what I think supports nominations and what weighs certain movies down, like I did last year, and how Battle of the Sexes, something like that, just instantly became just out the window. It was gone. No nominations possible. That was it. I will definitely be making videos on those. If you have any movies, like one-offs you want me to talk about, I plan on doing reviews for each Oscar movie that I see, hopefully starting pretty soon in September with the Oscar wannabes, like something like White Boy Rick, even though that looks pretty good in my opinion. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.